Yay. All right, I'm just doing a quick, super quick introduction, and then ladies, I will let you introduce yourselves. Welcome to day 3 of the SDE weekend. You are here for the first session of the day, which is PTA Remix, a new approach to parental involvement. And I have to do a little backstory, y'all. Malika, don't kill me. Because over the past 2 days, I've heard so many folks talk about community, right? And how appreciative we are of that. So I was thinking about how Malika and I met, and
I guess I don't.
hold on, let me make sure everyone's muted. That it was book club, right? Yes. Okay, so dang, was it last? I don't even know. Pandemic has me losing track of time, but last year, the year before, I don't know.
I think it's 2020, actually.
It was at the end of 2020. I was like, hey, there's this amazing book. It's called Raising Free People by Keela Richards. I'm going to read it. Who wants to do it with me? And some folks joined, and that book club from 2020, there are folks in there who are still going strong, many of whom I see today. Hey, Esther. Hey, Kay. Hey, Janelle. And it turned into, people are like, how do you find your community? How do you find your people? And that group of people, amazing people, has met weekly or bi-weekly for over a year and a half just to share about life and their experiences. And it was through that I was heard just Malika talk and hold space and just share her own unschooling journey. And I was like, folks need to hear this. They need to know what's going on. And now they will explain, but she's entering into this new school space with her young person. And I'm like, look, what they're doing is amazing. Can we have more folks learn about this? So I am going to mute myself and pass the mic to Malika to introduce herself, who can pass it to Beth to introduce herself, and we get to kick this session off.
Hello, welcome from the Midwest. We are coming here from Kansas City, Missouri. I was asking people while we're coming in where people are from. I'm just always interested. You know, Kansas City is kind of thought of as flyover states. That's so rude. So rude. It's people that live here. We live here. You know, just fly over here. But I am interested in where people are coming from, because as Damari talked about community, I'm just interested in where are the communities of people that are hanging out together. So I see Damari is from Maryland, Piscataway land, okay, called Frederick, okay, all right. I see people from Massachusetts, Nevada, hey, Michigan, New Orleans, Canada. Somebody's gonna have to help me with this. Where's Elizabeth? I don't know how to pronounce this one. Oh, Montreal, Canada. There is I guess an indigenous name there, but I don't know how to pronounce it, so I'm not gonna try. Northern Virginia, San Diego, California. We got some other California people, North Carolina, New Mexico. Yeah. Shout yourself out. Where are you from? I'm still looking for the Midwest people. I don't see those people. Beth, do you see any Midwest? No Midwest people. Okay, so that's okay. We are going to
y'all gonna have to represent.
We're gonna represent for the Midwest and show that this type of liberation practice is all over. It's all over, not just on the coast. All of us are trying to figure out some way to liberate ourselves, and also use that as a way to liberate, give our children a path of liberation also. Hey, Beth. How you doing, Beth? Beth is my co-host.
I'm well.
Beth, are you from here? Are you from Kansas City?
I'm actually on the other side of the state line, in Shawnee, Kansas.
So she still is representing another flyover state, Kansas.
Yeah.
Kansas. So welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So I was also asking what people are coming here for. Like, why are you here? And not here in this SDE Alliance, but in this particular session, we want to give you space to use the chat. We're going to be asking questions, so we may have opportunities for people to also share some of their stories. Okay, so I see Anna Marie is here to learn more about your parent circle, learn more about our parent circles. Yes. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that. Are you clapping for me? Thank you. Mighty is over here clapping in the back.
Hey, what's up?
So to learn more about your parent circles, cool. We are going to do our best to give you some information about what we're doing. I can tell you that this is not a how-to course. So what we are going to be doing is taking you along on the journey with us. We are a really, really new space. And so we kind of want to treat this, not only are we sharing with you, but we are going to be asking you more questions too about you as a parent and what your parent experience is, or what you would be looking for as a parent being involved with your children in the SDE space. So with that, welcome, and let's get started. Beth, you want to start with your introductions? We want to kind of tell you a little bit more about who we are.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. I'm Beth Sarver. I'm one of the founders, probably the key driver of the Kansas City Restoration School. I'm also a guide, but more importantly, what brought me to the work is being a parent of a child who was not being well served in modern schools. So I'll certainly get into more details about that.
Well, I am a parent. I have been parenting I became a mother 8 years ago. And at that time, I'm also a parent of an adopted child. And not many Black people were talking about adoption at the time. So I started a podcast called Add Water and Stir. And it was for families who were raising adopted Black children, and kind of what that felt like and how we were often not a part of the conversations. So we did that for about 2.5 years. I've been blogging about parenting for a long time. I have a website because I also was adopting parents, blogging about adopting. And so I blogged for a long time at MimiRobinsonOnline.com, and I posted my parenting experiences on Facebook. So I've been talking about this a long time, really, because I was like, so any of y'all having problems? Because I'm having struggles of y'all, not everybody else seems to be having it easy, but I'm having problems. Let me just kind of talk about that in public. And then we've been in public school since pre-K. And it's always been a challenge in public school. So it was really hard for us. But of course, because I am also a product of public schools, my goal was to make it fit, like we're going to make this work. My mother is a teacher, so I come from a very strong public school background. So it's like, this is school. This is what you have to do. You need to get it together. But it just was challenging. And then during that first bout of remote schooling that happened in March 2020, during that time frame, I was able to see up close really the challenges that she was having with her teachers, just her challenges of being able to sit and do that type of learning. She is a very active child. There's not a place that she ever walks to. She skips, flips, trips, runs, anything besides walk. So sitting in front of a computer for all that time to learn wasn't working. So I decided we were going to just not do school. If we were going to do remote schooling again the next year, we just weren't going to do that. And so we left the school district, and around the summertime, I started learning about unschooling. So I was like, well, part of unschooling, or even if you're going to do homeschooling, they say, because I'm a schoolish person, so I want to know all the rules. So I'm like, okay, what do you do? Okay, you have to de-school first. Okay, so let me do that. So then we're going to de-school. So we started de-schooling that summer. And through that process, started just learning more about unschooling. And I thought that might work for our family, but we have a long deschooling period. I would say that we are still deschooling. And so I started writing about that process online. And I would tag it deschooling out loud, because for me, I don't know, for some other people, perhaps it was pretty easy, but it is so challenging for me to release all of these pieces of control and power and thought process and everything. And I think sometimes when you get to a space where you understand it, you can create content around that, and the content is there about what you should be doing, but how you get to that space and the fact that it's so messy internally and it's so challenging, that part wasn't being, I didn't see that part represented, like how challenging this was for you to work through your own personal processes. And so I started talking about that. As Damari mentioned, I went to the Raising Free People book club, found a crew of people, Kate, Esther, I don't see who else, Jonelle is on here. Those people and a couple of other women we've been holding this down together. So that's how I got here to this place oh, let me finish that. So that's how we ended up deschooling. But then Beth, I think, we met, Kansas City is not that big of a place. So we met around town during a kind of entrepreneurial type of world. That is a kind of circle. So we met through that circle. But I think Beth was seeing some of my posts online, and she started tapping me and saying, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing, or I'm working on this school thing. And I had been looking to figure out, maybe I should start some kind of collective of Black unschoolers or homeschoolers. But quite honestly, during the pandemic, I didn't have the capacity to do another single thing besides get up and go to work and make sure we all stayed alive. I didn't have the capacity to organize anything, call anybody, just not do anything. And Beth was like, I'm starting a school over here. You should consider it. And we started down that path. So that's how we got to this place of why we are now currently the founding family, one of the founding families of the Kansas City Restoration School. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Beth, and she's going to talk a little bit about why she's here.
Sorry. So prior to coming to the crazy idea of starting a school during a pandemic, I have a twice exceptional child with some areas of, giftedness and high levels of self-directed capacity, and learning challenges and struggles with anxiety and other, just maintaining a healthy mind in education. And public schools became a place that his doctor believed were doing harm. And so we left public education his fifth grade, at the end of his fifth grade year. And we set about deschooling. And I knew that, my calling has always been to work in education. I'm a trauma sensitive schools resilience educator and have been consulting in schools for many years. And I also knew that as schools were not necessarily healthy spaces for adults either. And so I knew that I didn't want to homeschool forever, and began researching and found Sudbury schools, found a variety of schools around the world, the Agora School in the Netherlands, and Acton Academy down in Austin, and I just started looking around and finding that there are these other pathways where my child could have more freedom, more time to be in his body and to be right where he's at. So if math is overwhelming him with stress, then maybe the just right learning is about stress instead of about math, so that, you know, eventually someday he's going to have some really high levels of self-knowing awareness, and he's going to be able to do math because he can do stress. A parent from a previous school that I had worked at let me know about this school that was starting here in Kansas City, the Kansas City Sudbury School. And when I came to the group, I came with a vision for what I felt like was needed in modern schools, which is that trauma-informed resilience culture. And I just didn't see that it was able to happen in a modern school. And so the Sudbury School, as I became involved and we began to really interrogate the methods and the ways in which, you know, families of, you know, like mine, families of color, our goal to build a school in Kansas City, we really wanted it to have a practice of anti-racism. And how would you do that with the structures that were set in place already in a Sudbury school? How could we do that and not change some things and create some different pathways? So the Restoration School is what was born out of all of that deep dive into my need as a parent, but also my needs as a professional, and also the feedback from parents and folks who are interested in our school and what we were trying to accomplish. And so I came to the work both as a parent and as a professional, seeking freedom for my child and for myself. I think that hits it. We're going to go a little bit deeper on some other things. I'm trying to track our agenda here, Malika.
Okay, so we have some questions in the chat here, or at least some answers to what people are interested in learning. So I see that people are interested to see how SDE spaces involve parents, to learn more about how the parent circle works, learn more about parents in SDE learning centers, schools. Jose, I think, Joshua, I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong, says that he feels a strong disconnect with the parent-school dynamic and would like to learn more about how we bridge the connection, how we created a PTA. So some people are in learning spaces where their young one doesn't have one. And then Janelle has some other questions about the school, and I think we'll get to it as we talk a little bit more about the school. And heavy parent involvement in all aspects with the Liberated Kids BIPOC in Oakland, California, where there's heavy parental involvement in all. Yes, we are still figuring it out too, and that's why we are having this conversation. So Raj, we would love to have you involved in that part of the conversation. I'm kind of a PTA type of chick, right? So every school that my kid has belonged to, I have been heavily involved in the whatever parental organization is part of that. I think and I've been at very different types of PTAs, right? One of them was a professional, private, early childhood kind of place that was attached to my job. And it was very professional in terms of how they did meetings. And then I went to a very highly resourced neighborhood school. And my husband and I were one of the few Black families that would attend the PTA organization. And they were they just had connections to the neighborhood and to businesses in the neighborhood, and were able to pull in resources in ways that I had only heard about on podcasts. So I was able to actually see that in real action. And then we also went to what I would call a multicultural magnet school, and it had a very large Latinx community, and the PTA was just very different. At the highly resourced school, they would have the PTA, some business would give us dinner, but at the PTA, at the multicultural organization, we would do a potluck. And so just the resources were different, the way that their meetings were managed were different, and really their impact on the school, their ability to impact the school was different. Never have I really been in a PTA where there's teachers involved. It's usually parents kind of trying to kind of organize on behalf of the school. And truly, I think it's a lot about what parents feel like people need versus maybe what the school is actually asking for. So, I mean, I think it has both pieces of it. And upon reflection, when I was ready to talk about this, I was like, why were you so involved in the PTA? Because I don't think that that's everybody's experience to be that involved with their kids' school. And it was multiple things. One of them, I like to talk about class a lot because I don't think we talk about class too much, but I was a middle-class parent and I was a stay-at-home mom, and that's kind of what the move was at that time, right? So we were a group of people that stowed up at the school with our kid and hung around, drank coffee, and then had these other meetings. This is at the highly resourced school. So I just had an idea that if you were a stay-at-home mother and you were middle class, that's part of the role that you're supposed to play. You're supposed to be highly involved in your parent and your kids, whatever they're doing. You're supposed to be right there with them. I think there was a really strong desire for a community. We had moved back to Kansas City. This is where I grew up, but I lived away from here since I was 18. And so there was a desire to really find a place for community. We were not a part of a church. And so the idea is if we can be part of this school community, especially the one that's in our neighborhood, then we can find a place to have friends and people to connect with and someplace to do our, put our energy in. And then lastly, quite honestly, it was for protection. I had a Black girl in public school, and I felt like if I am up at the school and you see me and you know me and I'm actively doing work and I'm creating social capital, that I can use that as a protective force for my kid, right? So you might treat these other kids this way, but this kid, she has people, because you see me up here, right? So you see me doing stuff, maybe that will help to protect her. And I was really upset that it did not help. It did not help to protect her in the ways that I thought it would. And so I had decided I'm not going to be in a PTA anymore. I'm no longer, so this thing does not work. I'm not doing it. And I will not participate in PTAs anymore. I'm just going to send my kid to school like everybody else when I find a new school, and then we'll figure it out from there. And so that's really kind of my perspective about PTAs until we started this process. And when I talked to Beth has a very different story about PTAs, but I also want to, in the chat, let us know, or if anybody has a story to share after Beth shows her, we want to hear kind of, do you have any experiences with parent organizations? Beth, how was yours? Because you said yours was very different than my perspective.
Yeah, I think for me, my son loved preschool, and the first week of kindergarten was asking questions like, when does this end? When do we not have to come back? When can we be done with this? And so for me, my son just hated school from the beginning. And so the idea of the PTA at first for me was like, oh, this is something I should do. This is, what a good parent does, is they help. But my child didn't want to be at school, and any kind of activity that was extra felt like oppressive to him. And so the idea of investing time in what the PTA was doing in his schools it just felt like far more than I could handle as a single parent, and as a parent of a child who really deeply just did not like school and had very negative associations with it. And so I felt, bad about it. I felt like I was not doing something, but in the end, I just didn't have the bandwidth for it, and never really engaged in the PTA as a member. I, did a class party a couple times, or baked things and brought things, but I always felt like there was more that I would have liked to have done to been a part of a parent community, but I didn't feel like that was what was being offered either. I felt like the expectation of a PTA member was just not something that I really personally was interested in for my own self either. So it was very much like, I don't know, kind of this pull of like, it's my responsibility to be engaged, but ultimately it doesn't feel right. So I never did. And so in thinking about how to engage parents in our school, I knew that it had to be more self-directed and more really open for parents to engage in a variety of ways. And so I was so excited when Malika accepted the role of parent circle coordinator, because I think parent voice in school is essential.
Awesome. So I saw that Damari said she went to one PTA meeting and she never went back. Somebody else was the class parent for their daughter's school and really enjoyed it. And I want to open the floor if anybody wants to kind of unmute yourself and kind of talk about what your experiences have been with PTAs. Okay. Hi, welcome. Is that Joshua?
Oh yeah, Josue. I was just curious, what is a class parent?
What is a class parent? We don't have a class parent at Restoration School, but in public school, I think it's a person who is in charge of organizing the other parents of children in the class. So like if you're going to have a like a party for the class, maybe you're going to have like a holiday party. So you need somebody to kind of organize who's going to bring what to the party and who's going to decorate. So so the teacher doesn't have to do that type of work. Also, if perhaps like snacks, like when my kid was younger, we needed snacks. Somebody needs to kind of organize the snacks. So we have some questions, Beth. You want to answer some of these questions? So what's the size of KC Restoration? How many students? How many staff guys? They just kind of want to get a general idea and maybe even say how old it is, like when it started.
Yeah, so we currently have 13 students, and actually tomorrow on Monday, we have 2 students coming for their week 1 adventure, and that's our trial week where students come and try it out, have the lived experience, and that gives them an opportunity to, see the good, the bad, the ugly of a day in the life of a self-directed learner at our school. And that gives us an opportunity to really feel out if we have the capacity to serve the individual, and to make sure parents are clear about what we are and what we are not. Some students end up taking another week. So hopefully at the end of this next week, all things going well, we'll have 15 students. We have the capacity in our current space to be at 36, although with COVID, We definitely don't see that as being a good idea at all. We have 2 guides, and we are a nonprofit private school. We are not, yeah, so I think that's that question. And
How did you choose the name Restoration?
so I don't know if we want to shift to the next topic and show the slide of the Sudbury versus Restoration, but when we were Kansas City Sudbury School began in May of 2019. I came to the school as a board member in right in the heart of COVID, when the folks who were beginning to think that this isn't going to happen, that the Kansas City Sudbury School wouldn't happen. And so when I joined, I brought with me some expectations that what we would build would be that we would, if we're going to do this in Kansas City, we have to seek to be anti-racist. We have to seek to be trauma informed, which is, a journey. Both of those are not just, you don't just say it, right? It's a practice. And lastly, we have to have equity-based economics so that our school is accessible to people throughout the economic spectrum. And so as we began to look at the bylaws of the organization and how would we actually change our bylaws so that it exemplified and put into practice those practices, we added another section to our bylaws called Restoration. And it was really focused in on restorative justice, restorative practices in regards to being trauma sensitive. And so when we began to get some pushback from the community around, is this still a Sudbury school? We began to recognize, well, no, it's not. It's really, we're leaning in to the restorative process on so many different levels. So like this is just kind of a brief look at, but a traditional Sudbury school, we have similar principles, but we really like to focus in on like core values being our accountability. And when we thought about that, how do we build an equitable school in Kansas City? We knew that we would have to have parent involvement. We knew that we were going to draw learners who would need support in becoming self-directed learners. And so with that, we made some decisions about having a curriculum, and that's very different from a Sudbury school. So we have a daily community circle where we are delivering mini lessons on restorative practices, mindfulness, body awareness, and ultimately self-directed learning. So as we changed our vision, we changed the name. So then we became the Kansas City Restoration School. We also we moved away from a majority rule democracy, and we use a sociocratic circle process, so a consent-based democracy. And rather than the judicial council, we moved to restorative circle. And then of course we have, this belief that if we're going to do any of this well, we have to have parents engaged. We have a sliding scale tuition. So with that, to try to make the economic aspect of the school work, which we're still figuring out, we created a time bank, a way of exchanging time. So parents, households are expected to invest 20 hours a year in the school. So Malika, as the parent circle coordinator, is contributing her time, her hours to the school to help it work. So parents, when they sign on to be a contributor of time. Let's see. Were parents involved in?
I think when Beth talks about this, as you saw on the slide, it's different, right? So you have this new type of school. I know how to do school, right? I know how to do that. I went to school. I am at the school. I understand the curriculum. I understand here's the rule book. They're out on the website. If you want to get the policies, I understand school. But this new thing with democratic, sociocratic decision making, what is that even, right? Or a time bank where now as a parent, if you want to participate, your family, part of that is giving time to the school. And what are these restorative circles? Like, I have heard about them. All of these things are very different. And for like someone who had already experienced really challenging times in regular schools and challenging with the administrators, I felt like I really like that Beth talks about being trauma informed, because we had trauma, right? We had trauma that came from school. And so not only is this concept trauma informed from a perspective of the child, but also from the parents who are walking into the space. And so the idea that you can have a space where I'm just going to send my child into another black box, that sounds really unfamiliar, right? I'm still unschooling over here. I'm still deschooling over here. So I'm still trying to work through these processes myself and learn about these things. And then to kind of flip and give my kids that, the idea that we would not have a parent circle or some way to get involved felt challenging. But with any new thing, you still need somebody to decide that they're going to step up and do something. And it's very easy to be on the back and just be like, I don't know about the way they're doing that. That feels uncomfortable. And I feel like I'm not getting enough information, but no, and I'm aware that they need help, right? And so we have a lot of questions about the school. Let's get some of these questions about, because I think that gives like some content too. So we talked about whether it was a private school or not. Damari asked if any of the parents involved any changes that you made as you transition away from the Sudbury model. And then, and while you're talking about that, the daily community circles mandatory for all kiddos, and do the kids have to attend 5 days a week? So just maybe more kind of information about the school. You know what? I want to ask a question. Just who has a child currently in a SDE space or is currently involved in SDE space? Can you do like something on the Zoom chat? That'll give us an idea, like put your thumbs up or hands up or whatever you have on the, what can you do on the Zoom? The reaction. You can put a thumbs up if you have your kid or hands up or whatever in a SDE space. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4. So most people here, 5, most people don't. So what I'm kind of getting from the audience is like, we don't even know. Give us some more information about what this even is, so then we can kind of contextualize why this can be a little bit different from some other SDE spaces. So I see 6. Yeah, so it's still a fairly small grouping of people, because what I'm kind of feeling from the people are, yeah, I'm thinking about this, but I want to know if I'm going to be able to be involved in this, and how are you doing? Okay. And then I see some people that have a facilitator and that are facilitators of spaces. Okay. Awesome.
Cool. Yeah, so parents, we had parents who have been involved since the very beginning. The board, we had board members who were parents, but we also, actually the changing of the name was spurred on because a parent was like, this is not a Sudbury school. And interestingly enough, that parent is, their children are at our school. So what they were asking is, say what you're going to do, be straight. And if you're not doing it the way other people are doing it, then don't call it that. So, we invite hard conversations, and so yes, parents have been involved. Some parents didn't like that we changed the name. Some parents did, and it was, let the chips fall where they may on that one. But ultimately, it came down to the human beings that were doing the work to build the school, and we shifted towards what we truly believed was necessary, which was restorative practice. As far as the curriculum, so our community circle is a 15 to 20 minute circle, and we do not envision that going away. We do envision it becoming more youth led. And as our young people take on contribution jobs and other, self-directed, positions that they create for themselves, then we can imagine those circles becoming, more child-led. Another difference about our model is that we believe the staff are just as important as the students. Mr. J, my co-founding guide, is, like many educators, have left modern schools looking for an opportunity to experience freedom as well. And so, that dance that we do to be responsive to children, we're able to turn those community circle mini lessons into what we feel like the community is asking for. So if that's helpful, we're very responsive, and there's not a curriculum that's written down. We are literally creating it and documenting it using Rome Research, which is a great tool for documentation. Community circles are mandatory, but basically they just need to be in the room. And then we would like them to be present, fully present, mind, body presence, and engaged. We're trying to teach some of the skills of self-direction, but also like how to be in community and how to, do that in a way that's brain-based. So attuning to each other is very important. Let's see, Parent Circle is not currently a sociocratic, it's not connected to our governance structure yet. That's been something we've debated, and I think we'll continue to do so. We have an open campus policy. So if a child does not, if somebody wants to school from home for a day, either because it's too cold or they need a break, or they have, we had one family that had a homeschool co-op they were a part of, and they wanted to continue to do a Friday event that was being done at the homeschool co-op. So we have, a very flexible expectation around being on campus for learning. We expect that you'll be here 5 days a week, 5 hours a day. We have a soft opening in the morning from 8 to 10. Our community circle starts at 10. We're open from 8 to 4 every day. So there's some more details there. Let's see. I got everything.
So let's talk a little bit about the parent circle. So the parent circle is still being formed. So they asked about the sociocratic process. So far, we are not making decisions that impact the school. Really, we've started after the children started school, and we are still in, what do you call, the norming phase, the very beginning of what does it look like. And so this is a startup. We've said that. So it officially started in September. So it's about 5 months old, right? So in a startup, there's no rules, right? And because this is a SDE space, we are also approaching this from an unschooling kind of perspective too, which means I'm used to definitely a PTA that has a president and a vice president and a secretary and this, right? Which is my typical way of wanting to approach this. But this way, I just couldn't, right? We needed somebody to lead, but I also couldn't put in that structure and didn't want to. I didn't want it to be the same as what I had experienced it. So we're building this together. We currently meet and are trying to kind of formalize that. We currently meet twice a month. And that's a lot, I think, for typical parental involvement, right? We are used to kind of sending our children to a place and kind of, they do their thing, and that's a lot. But as Beth mentioned, we need parental support to make this school be economically valuable, right? Like the tuition that we pay is fairly low when we talk about a private school, and it is what is it called? Your salary based or your income based. It's income based. And so we need parental involvement. So we're asking for a lot from the parents, which is to meet with us on Zoom for one, and then try to meet in a in-person meeting where possible at the school so we can have work days, right? And work can look any type of way, cleaning up, but it could also be organizing. It could be working on some financial books. It could be doing a lot of different things, whatever the parents' work is, but it is in that manner. Our goal with the PTA is to not just have it be a place that is focused just on the, maybe fundraising or financial aspects or how the school is run, but to be a feedback loop between the school and the parents and children, right? Because we're also the people that are talking to our children, right? So how's it going? What's going well, what's going not? Some of it we do send our children to school to go talk to the school themselves about, but some of it we can also help facilitate, like I'm hearing this and we have questions, right? And it's new, right? So we're going to have questions because what are y'all doing? What's going on with this restorative circle? What like there's no rules. We're all making it up as we go. So it's no rules. So we have questions. We want to understand what's going on. Let me see if there's any other point. So since parent circle is not a part of the governance structure, are they mainly a project action-based circle, or do they give input to the governance circle? Not yet. And Beth, maybe you can talk about your vision of how you feel like the parent circle is. So let me kind of, before I turn that over, let me kind of say where we are right now. We still getting to know each other. We really are still getting to know each other and determine what it is that we want to do, but we know that it is imperative that we be here. When we talk about 13 children in a new space with new freedoms, there are a lot of interactions that they have that are some good and some bad. And it is, I think, critical for us as parents to get to know each other so we can feel a little bit better about how those interactions are going, right? there's just safety to me in knowing some of the other parents. So we kind of know, like, do we have some shared values? Do we think about things in the same way? You and your child and my child is not getting along right now, but I know that we are kind of moving in the same place. So that gives me a feeling of comfort that we're kind of going in the same pathway, even though our children are having this conflict. And it is different than at a regular school where they might be reprimanded and suspended or ISS. There's not that type of, that's not how they deal with things. So they're going to be back at the school the next day in the same place. And so knowing the parents and having that type of community is helpful to help us feel a little bit comfortable about putting your children back in that space. But Beth, the other part of that is giving input into the governance cert.
Yeah. So right now we have parents who are members of the circle interacting, contributing their time in different ways. We have a parent who's mentoring a group who are wanting to learn how to build a PC. And so we have a PC project that a parent is taking the lead and mentoring a group. We have a parent who is, making sure that our water jugs that I typically have refilled, she's like, can I take that off your plate? Can I do that for you instead? Right. So parents are interacting in a variety of ways. We have two parents who just decided that they would love to take on administering the time bank, which is a huge load. And it's a big lift for one person. And so that's a lot of what we're doing right now, is like getting to know each other and finding how this extraordinary opportunity can be a way to not only meet the needs of the school, but also for parents who are also on their own learning journey as well. So, I mean, I think my vision for the parent circle was one of education. So making sure that parents really understood what we're doing, understood, what do you mean by trauma-informed resilience? What does that mean? What does that have to do with my kid? Is this a school for kids with trauma? Like, what does that mean? Like, we really wanted to, in the beginning of the parent circle, as just an idea, wanted to make sure that we were being clear. What is self-directed education? What are we? So I think we definitely have room to grow on how we educate and, provide opportunities for training and all of that with the parent circle. I'm excited that there's interest in that. And I think the opportunity that comes when parents bring their gifts and talents and perspectives into a community is, it's almost impossible to foresee what could occur. I am very open to the idea of parent circle becoming a part of our governance structure. In sociocratic schools in the Netherlands, the parent circle is a part of the school meeting circle. That's not a change we've made yet, but it's something that I think, we would definitely, at some point discuss. I'm trying to track the questions to the side. They're like zooming through. So maybe.
Let's see a couple of things. So someone asked about training. I want to get to I do want to talk about those things, and we might be able to provide some of those answers at the end. Do we consider ourselves a PTA association, or is that a point of reference? It is not considered a PTA association within the legal framework of PTA. It just used that as a point of association for anybody that is coming from another type of school that we're more familiar with. So no, I don't consider us a PTA, but we have there are going to be some PTA type stuff happening, right? I think when you have a school that has the desire to grow, but it's a private school and it it's income based, right? So that means that there are times where from a financial space, running at a deficit, right? So there is going to be need for assistance with helping with fundraising, for instance, and we would like parents to be really involved in that. I think the other point I want to make is that Beth talked about learning. I think it's very challenging to have your child at a space like this, where they are learning these tools like restorative justice and having these conversations, where they are coming to a group with a proposal and everybody tries, they talk through it, try the proposal, and then refine it. And then they want to bring those same things home. And if you're not familiar with those type of things because you're not involved with it, there's going to be some resistance, right? So they're going to come home and be like, well, why can't we just try it for a week? And you're like, because I said so. I don't, so if you are not in process of learning with that, it's going to create resistance. And I think everybody comes to the school with their own level of desire of how they want to incorporate these type of principles in their home life. But my vision for this organization is to be that bridge between there, right? You can off-ramp that how you want to at your house, but just know that your kid is going to be coming home with some of these expectations for how they should be talked to, how they should interact with, people, a sense of justice that comes with that. And we want you to be aware and starting to prepare for that. So how do you have those conversations with your kids? And that's where I see a lot. So the PTA is there to help support the school, but also it's a learning opportunity for us to continue to learn some of these things ourselves, at least to be able to understand what our kids are doing. And so during this next year, I'd like us to focus more on some of that, that type of learning, because they're starting to move more into using these principles more fully. And I think it's going to show up in our houses. It's going to show up.
Yeah, there's nothing like your kids saying, I do not consent to that.
Right.
And having a parent who's less on board say, well, I don't care. So there's definitely a strong, I think, importance for parents to understand and to even be able to commiserate with each other on the challenge of having children who have the ability to say, I do not consent, or I object to this, and here's why.
And all parents don't come, I think there's a question, all parents don't come to the school, to the PTA, probably for various reasons, right? I think the value proposition is still being created. Like, what's the value proposition? If I don't know what I'm going to get out of this experience, or I think somebody said they went to one and it was BS, right? What's the reason for me to be involved? And I guess I want to open it up to the audience here and say, why would you come to a PTA or a parent circle meeting? What would you want to receive out of that? Let's see. There was a question. As a parent, what's the main reason you have stayed involved with the school? The main reason is my child likes going to this school, and she didn't necessarily like going to her other schools. So if I want this place to continue to exist, then I have to participate in helping for it to continue to exist. And so that is the main reason why I stay involved with the school. It is for other reasons. Of course, there are other things that I like about the idea and the school, and it supports some of our values, but really it's because my kid wants a place to go and this meets her needs, and they are working with her, and she wants to be there. That's the main reason. If we want something to be there, we can't just sit back and not be involved. You got to be there. You got to be there. So Beth, do you want to open up the thing, like to people's
To additional questions
yes,
or what they might want out of a parent circle?
sure.
Sure.
What would y'all want if y'all were part of a PTA or parent circle? What would make you come to your meetings twice a month?
For me, I think what you mentioned and what Anna Maria in the chat was talking about, like the tools to be able to understand what my child is getting at school, to be able to support that at home, right? It's like, this is the connection between what's happening at school and how I can help bridge that gap. So when they come home, we're speaking the same language that's happening at school. So it's like a seamless transition. And I'm not fighting against what they're doing. And I'm not requiring my child to code switch between the language they're using at school and what we're using at home. So support in being able to do that.
Absolutely. I so agree with that. I think, and I love that people are dropping, thank you so much for people dropping their resources in the chat, because for us, we're sharing with you what we're doing at the school and how this parent circle is coming together. And it is still new. Again, the parent circles is about 3 months old. So we're still brand new. And if you have some ideas, Nora says she's been trying to introduce parent education connection opportunities at her school, yet only 1 or 0 families show up. Tips on making that opportunity more attractive, valuable for parents. I think for us, it starts with the community first, right? So the parent circle together decided we have kind of a text chat where we have official things that happen with the school that the guides can send out, so we have a Google Drive, what's it called? Google Groups, right? Google Groups that goes through your email. But then we also have like a chat of all the parents. But we want to be able to connect on a way that's not official, right? And we don't want people to lose sight of like official things that are coming from the guides, like no school tomorrow or school is out at 1:30. We don't want that. So the parent group decided to create their own text chat, right? So they can chat. And so instead of Facebook where we have to have something else, we can just chat and talk about, share resources, chat about stuff, create a connection there. And that's still very new. But for me, the idea is as those connections happen, then we start chatting about resources and sharing things like that. And then that need and understanding and connection will then be the opportunity for us to say we can have this education opportunities, right? Absolutely, Janelle, to share the concepts and ideas that are going on during a day. So then we can also have a pulse on, I can have a pulse on what's going on and what the community needs. Like, what's everybody talking about? Okay, nobody really understands restorative justice circle. Let's talk about that. Or people are coming home talking about consent and that's not happening. Let's talk about that in our next meeting. So far, I don't have a answer for that, Nora, but that is at least my desire and intent on how to use kind of the informal connection to then move us to formal conversations. Are guides part of the group text? I don't think so. Beth, are y'all part of that informal group text?
I think that I am as a parent, and that's one of the hard things. I think, Raj, you said that you're a parent and a lead facilitator. So that's a unique challenge, right? To have your own kid in the mix while also tending to the community. And so, yeah, I think, go ahead. Was there someone who had
Mm-mm.
but I also feel like we have created some open communication and, requests for honest feedback. So I feel like I get a sufficient amount of criticism by inviting direct communication. But
in terms of that, I think that is a unique challenge, right? But I don't know if I think the culture that we want to create is not one where you can critique, right? But criticism is not something necessarily that we want to create, like just chatting on the chat kind of negatively. If we have questions, let's ask the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's have the communication to have the conversation. So if there is something happening, like, I don't understand why that's happening, let's get curious about that. And that's the same thing that we're going to talk, we practice with our children, right? Like, instead of putting a judgment on a thing that you don't understand, ask the questions and have those conversations. And that's not a skill that is something that has been typically developed, right? So it is, luckily we do have Beth and Mr. J. They're pretty good at being open to those questions, right? As conversation starters, and being open to receiving that as feedback. And so Gail asked about Beth, if you have any concerns about the parent circle not agreeing with and perhaps working against the school's founding principles. Yes.
So I believe that modern education is collapsing, and that human beings absolutely have to learn how to speak to people they don't understand and engage in hard conversations, be spoken to directly about a problem, and have the skills to take deep breaths and stay engaged in a hard conversation. So those are some of the things that we teach. So I'm not fearful that parents are, going to work against us with intention. I believe that parents are just like children, do well when they can, and when they're struggling and may become at a situation in a way that might sound defensive or combative. My training in trauma-informed practice and in mindfulness would encourage me to get curious about what more is going on so that I could understand. So I think we have to figure out these systems so that parents can bring their perspective to the table. And, certainly there could be deal breakers that come from the parent perspective of what we do or what the parent expects, but we try to be very honest and straightforward about what we do and do not have the capacity for.
I think that's a good question, Beth, because, I talked a little bit about having school trauma, right, as a family. And there are things that happen within the school, and maybe even rules, or not even rules, but just kind of ways of handling things that feel uncomfortable, right? I'm uncomfortable with the way, like Mighty has a challenge with a kid at school, and I'm uncomfortable with the way that's being handled. And we have those conversations, and you still might not be comfortable with the output of the conversation. And then you as the parents have to make some decisions about how you're going to move forward. So in terms of being intentionally, I think Beth talks about how people may come to the situation. I know that we've come, the first time we got called for a meeting to have a meeting, I know we showed up like, so what do we have to round, well, you know, what's going on? You know, yeah, exactly. Like, what do I need to get, you know, what do we need to do? You know, so, and we came in very anxious about the conversation because honestly, all of our other conversations with school administrators have been challenging, right? It's something wrong with your kid. Your kid is doing something wrong. You need to fix it. So that's the way we came to the conversations. Luckily, again, we have guides on the other sides that understand that human piece, like everybody is going to be walking into situations differently. And so in those conversations, right, you may have expectations that are against the principles of the school, right? I want this kid to be gone, or I want this to stop happening or whatever, but that is not the principle of the school. And so there is going to be that type of conflict. I think that's also why the parent circle is helpful, right? Because there's an opportunity for us to talk about those things there. I see that Raj, hi Raj, had a comment. Feel free.
Yeah, do you mind if I jump in?
Absolutely.
Kind of want to speak to Gail's question as well of like maybe the parent coming up with something different than what the founders or guides envisioned. And we're going through that process too. Like I feel like Liberated Kids is like my brainchild, but definitely from the beginning we've had parents involved, like in the formulation of it. So there hasn't been this us versus them. It's been this co-construct thing, but it's super messy. Obviously, it's super messy then, right? If you're co-constructing as you're going. But to me, that's part of that process. And like, if we are trying not to have the same colonizing approach of school, right? If we're trying not to have that same colonizing approach of being like, this is the self-directed space, these are the rules, this is what your kid's coming into, and now at these meetings, I will explain that to you. You know, like if we're not going to have that approach, I feel like there has to be some openness to being shaken a little bit, to being changed a little bit. And what I've kind of said, like, there's a couple of non-negotiables of the space, which is what brought you here, which is like, it's a self-directed space. We're not going to force the kid to do anything they don't want to do, right? Unless they're harming others or harming the space or something like that. Like non-negotiable number one. And for us, non-negotiable number two is like, we are a space where we're going to censor BIPOC voices and keep justice, social justice at its core as well. Like those are kind of non-negotiables, and everything else we kind of work through. And so I think like right now, we are actually going through a process where parents are actually collectively coming up with what are our core values and our core norms. And so kind of like what Malika was talking about, like this idea of like we need to get to know each other and see what's bringing us together. Because obviously there are something in common that brought us together. So like speaking to Gil, I don't think anything's going to be far off our vision because people came to us, looked at the website for a reason. But I think just the process of it is important, right? Like for everyone to be involved in this process, even if the values that come out of it are very similar to the values the founder thought of, it's now collective. It's now something that we did together and are moving towards. So yeah, I don't know if that fully answers, but like there's definitely a couple of things that have come up that weren't part of the initial vision of our space. But it's like, okay, like if we're truly going to be this decolonized space, where it's not like, no, this is it. Mm-hmm. Then we kind of have to go with it. Like it's so that's kind of our approach to it so far. Where we're at.
I agree, because again, it's going to be hard for me to send my kid to a black box and trust y'all, and y'all don't even know what y'all doing. You know, you guys are starting this together, not saying that you don't have a vision for it, but this is all new to all of us. Beth has never started a school before. We have never done unschooling before. My child has never unschooled before. We all don't know what we are doing, right? So we are all figuring out together. It requires an inordinate amount of trust right? And trust in a different way, because for school, again, everybody is doing that, right? So there's kind of built-in society trust that that's the right thing. So you just don't have to question this. But for this reason, it feels very different. We have experiences that we're bringing to the situation, and it does require a lot of trust. And because Beth and Jay are so open with that conversation, it helps to build that trust. And the parent circle is one part of where that conversation can be happening. Also, the goal is to be able to work some of those issues out with the parent circle without Beth and Jay always having to be the people that have to relate, resolve the issue, right? You have a question about something, and why are we doing it that way? Those of us that show up at the school or are there or what, we can start having those conversations, and Beth and Jay don't always have to be the persons doing that work because they're busy doing other type of work too. We want to be able to take some of the burden off of them. Yes, Raj, thank you so much for sharing that perspective. It's cool to see somebody else starting up and starting a new space, and also feeling like parents are critical to that piece of it. Okay, so Nora says, completely terrified of involving parents in my school because I do think many parents here actually work against some of the core values of the school, and we do not have truly enough shared values as a community. And some parents are directly against the things that are my non-negotiables. Whew.
Well, can I offer a thought
on
that?
Please do. Yes.
I think that your process of just from the first conversation, the first phone call, is when you begin to start, attuning or clearly communicating to any individual what you're about and what your non-negotiables are, and the culture that you're seeking to create. I think that, I know that there's been many conversations that we've had that have made it clear to people that we're not the right school for them. And so I think that it's not about being a place for everybody, that everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, this is right for me. It's about being clear, but also being, I think, open to contribution. And I think that's my hope for the parent circle, is that there is this kind of doorway into a whole other level of what's possible when parents are deeply connected and invested, and have a sense of how they can contribute beyond money, although money's great, we need that. But beyond just being present in a room to make sure, the kids have a good Halloween party or a good, but really, like, there's so much more that parents have to bring to the table, and their perspective is so important. But being really direct about what you are about and what you're not about in the beginning conversations, I think, would help to decrease the number of parents who are buying in by paying tuition, or I don't know what your structures are for fees, but if they're invested and they've gone through a vetting process, then I think it'd be less likely that they'd be seeking to sabotage. Or
I see Nora has a question. Hey, Nora.
Oh, hi. Yes. Oh, thank you so much for answering that. I was just going to add, maybe like part of the context that makes this incredibly difficult is I have just taken over the leadership of the school in the past year. So there's a lot of families, like the school was founded 6 years ago, and a lot of the families that I feel like there's the most, I don't know, like a lot of the new families that I've kind of brought in, I feel like are very values aligned, and a lot of the community, it's not a good portion of the community is very like aligned in a lot of these values, but then I feel like some of the parents who have been there quite a while are very much I don't know, like just didn't, I don't know if they just like somehow didn't have any awareness of what was happening at the school, which then made me think like, okay, we need to have more parent connection, involvement, parent education, you know, but then I feel like, I don't know, it's a very like, and I also, so I'm coming from a Sudbury background, but also I totally agree with a lot of what you've said, Beth, and what I've seen you write as well about issues in Sudbury. So yeah, it's a very like, I don't know, it's a bit of a, and I also come from like a restorative and transformative justice practitioner background as well. And so I feel like coming into this, I had a very strong belief of like, okay, you know, like, yeah, like conflict is productive, conflict is good, conflict doesn't have to be bad, all of these things. And honestly, some of the conflicts with some of the parents are kind of making me rethink whether conflict actually can be like, I don't know, it's a pretty, I don't know if maybe, yeah, we just don't have enough of a basis of shared values to be able to like collaborate and actually have like good conflict. I don't know.
Well, to have good conflict, I think you have to have a shared process. So having shared values is like amazing, but you can't necessarily get there right away. But if you at least have a roadmap through conflict, and you know there are many different, there are 3 main roadmaps that we use in our restorative circle process, and they get truncated for different purposes. But I would say that having a way that's already laid out, and that you can orient to, literally like give them the handout, or just to like, this is the practice of how we're going to show up in these meetings and have hard conversations. I think that would be my first thought of how to shift gears with the community that you currently have. Because the ability to have hard conversations, especially in these spaces, especially as a startup, my God, we have to, you know, be able to do that together.
Yes, we are sending vibes, but I think what's cool about this session is that I see Raj, Beth, and Nora as facilitators of schools. There are some other people that are some school facilitators. I mean, the connection of just having a crew. I know how important it's been to me to have a crew of other parents that I'm walking through this kind of process, which has been invaluable. So hopefully you guys can connect and continue to have some of that support. I think people come to this type of space for all kinds of different reasons, right? Some people come because of they had challenges with school like we did. I think some people never were bought into, you know, the traditional schooling, and they come. And I think some people come because it's it's kind of a new type of educational philosophy that maybe can give their children a leg up versus some other type of way. And so, you know, kind of understanding that perspective is all going to be involved in that, the people that are in your parent group, right? I think that's the kind of perspective that I come to it with, because everybody is not trying to be a radical unschooler like we are, right? They're just not trying to go there with you. But what I would like this space to be is that bridge for you don't have to do all the things that we do, right? But here's the language that your kid is going to be using. Here are some of the things to help keep that friction down. So let's see. Who else? So we got some offers for your community to come up with some shared values, norms, especially for anti-racist community. So we got some good things in the chat if you are chat. I like what Janelle is saying. You don't have to think what I think. We just want to get you thinking. And absolutely, that's the thing. I do our children are in this space together. We are all caught up in this really beautiful experiment together. And it is really an experiment, and it is a journey. We're all decided to join in this together. How are we going to walk through this process together, and how are we going to support the school where our children are attending, and make sure that it still exists for them if we really believe in the space? So Beth, there's a question, Monica.
I just trying to make a comment really. I put a little bit in the chat, but for me, answering your question earlier about what makes you engage as a parent, there's nothing that makes me disengage, because I'm like you, Melissa. I'm like, let's do this. Let's coordinate. I'm going to be that parent.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing made me disengage faster than feeling like people were being placated and not having the hard conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing that both as a teacher in a public school and as a parent at a preschool, it's like once I saw people being disingenuous, that I'm like, I'm done with that. Like, I can't put emotional labor and time if parents aren't going to be taken seriously. So I love, Beth, that I haven't seen it to have like really tough conversations and really hash it out. So I'm really excited to follow you all's journey and see how that works out. But for those who are having tough conversations with parents, have them, because faking it is a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. And to have the people who are really invested step away.
Okay, so we have 3 minutes left. I want to open the floor real quick to see if there's any last comments. Beth, do you have a last comment that you want to say?
I think the most important thing is that we are creating a space that, and from my perspective, this is my language, but that is rehumanizing the child's relationship with school, the staff relationship with school, the parent's relationship with school. Like I believe that schools have to reclaim the full spectrum and the full continuum of the experiences that we have, because we all affect each other. So in order to do that, we have to listen to each other and we have to seek to understand. So spending time together is essential. So I'm so thankful for all of the time that we get to be together, Malika, and work through this process of being lifelong learners in collaboration. So.
And Beth and I have this very interesting relationship that we are on together, because we have to talk a lot. We have to talk a lot. We share a lot of information. Our children are very connected. And so we have a lot of conversations, our hard conversations about our children also being in space together. And I've never had this before, right? I've just never started to feel okay with, if we have to have a conversation about my child that is not going to end in reprimand or walking away, that I'm doing something wrong as a parent. That is incredibly valuable to me. And I want all parents to have that. And there is, I think there is a process that we can get together collectively to get to that. I want to share how to get in touch with us, or at least follow our process as we end. If you want to follow what's going on at the school, Beth, you want to talk about that?
Sure. You can check out our website, Facebook. We're on Instagram and LinkedIn. Actually, we do have parents who've taken over the social media. So soon that will actually be more robust than what it's been in the past semester. But yeah, follow us on the social medias, or check out our website. And if you believe in what we're doing and you got lots of money to share with the world, throw some into that donate button that you can hit.
And if you want to follow, just kind of read some of my thought processes about deschooling and the process of doing that and getting better at that, then you can check out my websites. You can follow me on Facebook. That's where I probably post a lot of things. And Twitter, I post random things. And really, they're mainly about my challenge as a parent. So I have enjoyed the time with y'all. And thank y'all for coming to our session today. Goodbye from Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas, Shawnee Mission in Kansas. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.